Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Out of This World. I'm Jamie Hanshaw, and Rachel Wilson is back. And we are going to talk about, guess what? It's Britney, bitch.
I've been saying that all week.
I know. Who put her up to saying that? It's such a
Oh
weird
no.
catchphrase. But, anyways, last week we started at the beginning at her childhood, growing up in Kentwood, Louisiana. And we got all the way up to almost the first time she is going to be committed for her mental health. So, to recap her childhood, she grew up in a very, very small town in Louisiana. I found a couple things about her parents' relationship that were a little telling. In the late 70s, her mom filed for divorce due to adultery. So here is Mr. James Spears, aka Janie, already showing his true colors back in the 70s. They did not end up getting divorced, but he turned out to be sort of a crumb bum.
Yeah.
And continues to be one. He is in and out of jobs. They're so poor, he's sometimes hunting critters in the backyard for food.
Yep.
Did you hear that?
Yes, I did.
That's so crazy. So she's a toddler. She goes into voice and dance. She is singing in the church choir. She's doing ballet. She's doing jazz. She's doing gymnastics. She's doing voice lessons. She's doing talent shows. She's doing dance competitions, beauty pageants, and performing on local television, all as a tiny tot.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I think right away they thought that was like their one shot out of the kind of crappy life that they were in. That's what it seems like, because it feels like they just put everything they had into her. And we had said last time, where were they getting them? If they're so poor that they're hunting for squirrels in the backyard to eat at times, where are they getting money for all these different lessons and traveling and pageants, which are very expensive? Everybody knows pageants cost a lot of money to do. You don't make money doing them.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, where did they get that money? Was there like somebody else involved early on? I haven't been able to find anything, but who knows? It's just a little bit weird that they could do all that. So
it's sus. But yeah, they groomed her to be their cash cow, and it paid off big time.
Yep.
And even now in her conservatorship, one interview I heard with her brother, they call managing her finances the family business. So they are all leeching off of her. I call them the helots. There's this old movie about if you start to make money, then everyone wants a piece of you.
Mm-hmm.
And this bum tells the guy, he's like, watch out for the helots. They'll be around if you make money. And sure enough, Britney has got a bunch of helots that she needs to shake off.
Yeah, so, her dad famously said in an interview that he said Britney is a racehorse and she needs to be managed like one.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how he thinks of her.
So she's never even been treated like a person with her own agency. It's always been she's a product to sell and make money off of. So this was really cute. She ran the cash register at her grandma's diner as a little girl.
Yeah.
So she's been groomed to be pleasing and to work hard and get it done and make the money and be as sweet and pleasing as possible, which is it's kind of tragic because those kind of people can really easily get taken advantage of.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Especially girls. So dad tried to, one time when she was small, she remembers this incident where the dad tried to drive off drunk with Britney in the car, and she was only about 5, and him and the uncle got into a fist fight. That really stuck with her. The dad would break dishes and yell at the mom, so she was used to seeing these drunken, violent episodes as a child. She, performing was a type of dissociation for her. She could leave all of that behind and do her ballet or her tap dancing or her whatever.
Yeah.
Get the validation that way. She had an Aunt Sandra who she really loved and trusted that she would go to when she needed some normalcy. And part of her breakdown was when her Aunt Sandra died, and she felt like she didn't have anybody who had her best interest at heart.
Yeah.
Then she goes to New York City. She does all that Mickey Mouse stuff. She was in a play with Natalie Portman in New York City.
Yeah, I think they went to the same performing arts school.
Right. So here you've got this talent pool that grows up to be the A-listers in Hollywood. And they all have similarities in their mental health, right? That you can't deny.
Yeah. And we're going to really get deep into that in this episode, guys, because this is something that so many of these Hollywood starlets, pop star girls all have in common. And shocker, they all get sent to the same institutions.
Right? Yeah. That are owned by other celebrities.
Yes.
And this just happened. Doja Cat shaved her head out of nowhere. Did you see that?
I didn't.
I don't even barely know who she was. This is how old I am. I learned about her.
I do know, but like my younger kids will see like snippets of these things and tell me about them. But
I asked my husband, I said, do you know what is a Doja Cat? he goes, what is that, a crypto? I'm like, no, it's a singer. So we are old and out of touch. But I found this out. At one point, when her career is starting to take off when she was small, her dad finds out he owes a ton of money to the IRS.
Yes.
And the family was bankrupt.
Yeah, they declared bankruptcy right before her first album came out, too.
Right.
Yeah.
So this is...
Which you have to think that she had signed this record. They know it's coming out. They know it's probably going to do really well.
Mm-hmm.
That's exactly what you would do. If you had a ton of debt, you'd file for bankruptcy first so that you don't have to pay off any of that stuff. And you can basically like keep all the money and start over.
Or we were kind of speculating in the last show about her childhood and how she could have been groomed for the MK Ultra program because her dad might have been compromised in some way.
Yes.
So this IRS thing was maybe another outlet for them to get to him and her.
Yes.
Right?
Could be.
It's just speculation. There's no proof. I'm just like little detectives. We're putting the threads together. Mom's on the net. Right? So let's see. In 1994, girl groups were all the rage. And like they were trying to capitalize on like Josie and the Pussycats and Spice Girls.
Yep.
Come out with all sorts of girl bands. And she almost joined a group called Innocence.
Yes, I know about that one. I've actually met one of the girls who was in that group.
Oh, really?
Yeah. She's like a fitness model now. Her name's Amanda Latona, but I've met her I used to do makeup and stuff for bodybuilding shows. And I've met her and talked to her at some of those. And she talks about how happy she is that she feels like God saved her from the music industry because she found out so many horrible things. That was a band that was going to be a Lou Pearlman project. Mm-hmm. If you guys know anything about Lou Pearlman, he's the one behind like O-Town, NSYNC, and who else? There was another really big boy band. He did a lot of boy bands and he turned out to be a total scam artist, total creeper, went to prison, died in prison, but he was very bizarre, had lots of weird connections to other famous people, very suspicious stuff like in his background, but he turned out to be like, they said he ran one of the biggest Ponzi schemes that they've ever seen through the music industry and insurance companies and all this stuff. It was like very elaborate. So she almost ended up with that creeper, but then she ended up with the record deal just for herself, which doesn't seem like it turned out a whole lot better.
No, and so she comes out overtly sexual, and her interviews during this time are so disgusting. Like the questions that they give her, I would walk out.
I would too.
But I'm a 40-year-old grown woman, but 16.
But even when I was young, like I think I would have cried. Because I've gone back and watched some of those, and they are so humiliating and degrading. It's like a public humiliation thing, what they did.
It really is. They like to build you up and tear you down at the same time. And this is a monarch mind control technique.
Yep.
And the questions are just so like, why do you dress like such a slut? Are you going to have sex? Have you had sex? Just
how much are you going to have sex? Who are you going to have it with? Do you think that when you dress like this, it makes other girls want to be sluts too? Like just really crazy stuff. And these are like major respected media figures asking her this. They're not even like, small time journalists. These are like big time journalists on big media programs asking her this in front of the whole world. And she's underage. And I'm just, now you go back and watch it. And I don't know how the American public watched it at the time and just didn't think anything of it.
Yeah.
I don't know how people weren't pretty outraged about it. Maybe they were, but I don't remember. I remember them all being outraged at her and her outfits, but I don't really remember people being like, wait a minute, this is a teenage girl. What are we doing here?
Yeah. So, and I feel like the mainstream media likes to mock people from the South.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Because living in the South, you realize like, we don't need the North. Like we have our own music, our own culture, our own cities, our own vibe, our own everything. Like we don't care if snobby people from, Nantucket approve of our lifestyle.
Yeah.
We have Grand Ole Opry.
Yeah.
To compete with opera, like high art and stuff, which is beautiful. And I appreciate that, but it can get very snobby and stuffy.
Yes.
And people from the South are not like that.
Well, and all of these global elite villains that we always talk about are from like New England area. They're all like New Yorker type. So it's not even like I'm from Michigan, but I'm from like rural backwoods, like middle of nowhere, Michigan. And they don't like us either. They think we're stupid Midwest bumpkin dummy Christian people that are silly and naive too. It's just like these elite Boston, New York type of people who are all like Ivy League educated, and they think that that's the only place to be. And if you're Midwestern or especially Southern, the Southern folks get it the worst. Yeah, they really like to make fun of those people and be really horrible to them.
Yeah, so here's Britney with her little accent and her Southern charm, and she is the biggest pop star of all time, and they don't like that, so they have to get their digs in.
Yeah, and they do.
Yeah, they really do. Let's see. She meets Kevin. This was funny. So she proposed to Kevin herself, and he kind of said no at first. And then he said yes because he like turned around and proposed to her. But you can just tell, man, I have a picture of this guy now.
Oh, I know.
What a dirtbag.
He hasn't aged well. Spoiler.
His 40th birthday. And here he is in Vegas celebrating. Look at that smirk. Like,
and the ridiculous hairdo.
Oh,
and just,
I know.
I don't know. I don't know why poor Britney always ends up with these guys that look like they're canvassers for Monster Energy back in the late 90s or something. Or they look like little Fred Durst clones or something. They all are like the same California. There's like a specific type of California trashy guy that yes. They wear the flat billed hat, and they wear the wife beater and the saggy pants
and the hoodie.
Yeah, and the hoodie and everything. And it's just like this specific type of guy that she always ends up with, except this latest one who's weird in his own way. But we'll get
to him. So she starts to have some kind of normalcy, and I feel so bad for her and her children because all she ever wanted was a family.
I know. There's so many clips of her talking about how she just wants to be a mom and she wants to have kids, and she feels like that's the coolest thing that you could ever do. And everybody who knows me, any of my watchers, fans out there, knows that that's like a big deal to me. I'm big on like restoring motherhood to being an honorable, cool, venerated thing to do with your life. Instead of everybody trashing motherhood as something you do if you're too lazy to have a career. Mm-hmm. And she really just wanted to do that. And even after the conservatorship stuff started, she had said she wanted to have more kids. She said she wanted to have 5, which is what I have. And it made me so sad because they forced her to get an IUD mm-hmm. and they wouldn't let her have it removed. Mm-hmm. And she wanted to have more kids. And that's like a really gross violation of human rights, in my opinion, to forcibly not like, it's like what they would do to people when they would give them lobotomies or something, back in the day, where it's like, oh, you can't have children. And her dad doesn't want her to because it would present legal problems for the conservatorship, number one. And number two, there's more people that her money has to go to.
Mm-hmm. So she's starting to have this family with Kevin. I feel like that was probably like the happiest time of her life. Her pregnancies, and her 2 boys were born within like a year of each other.
Yeah.
And she was on TikTok this week because Mr. Federline released some secret footage of her yelling at the kids, thinking that this was going to be some kind of damning thing against Britney. But everyone is rallying around her, saying all she does is sound like a normal mom, saying, you need to respect me, and this is my house, and I'm going to be your mother. And, like stern. She did say a couple cuss words, but this poor girl has been disrespected and abused her entire life. And now her kids, the one thing that she did everything for, are coming back and, giving her hate and disrespect. So I'm like, yeah, Britney, you put those kids where they need to be. Like,
well, and that's what like we would consider normal parenting, like real parenting, right? Yeah. But in the new agey weirdness that we now live in, it's like you're supposed to treat the child like a little golden god mm-hmm. who can never be upset and who can never cry, and you have to just give them everything they want. And if they fall down, you just rush over and you're like, oh my God, sweetie, are you okay? Like that's the approved parenting. Now, if you do actual parenting, which I always say, like I'm a Mary Poppins mom, where she used to say in the movie, she'd say, I'm kind but extremely firm. Mm-hmm. I think that that's ideal parenting to me, in my opinion, but you can't do that now.
Yeah.
Now children have to be treated like they're made of glass, and like if they think they're a boy when they're 2 and they're really a girl, you have to tell them that they're a boy. And you have to, like, if your child thinks they're a dinosaur, you have to say, you're the best dinosaur, sweetie. You're the most beautiful dinosaur mommy's ever seen. And you see moms in public all the time. The kid will be like smacking the mom with something, and the mom will be like, Jaden, Braden, Hayden, Caden, Aiden, sweetie, please don't hit mommy. That hurts mommy when you hit mom. And I'm like, the heck is this crap?
Yeah. This is gentle parenting is what you're talking about.
It's not good for kids to teach them that they're in charge and let them abuse you. That's kind of a side tangent, but it's like, yeah, I think they thought if you put this out, people would be horrified, and normal people in the world look at it and go, yeah, these are teenage boys who are being disrespectful and rude.
Yeah.
And she's telling them, no, that won't be tolerated.
Yeah. She's like, if I want to give you lotion for your face, I'm going to give it to you, and you're going to take it and put it on. Like, you go, Brittany. And I love how this backfired on Kevin and just made him look like the piece of TP he is. Okay. So this is another thing. They always painted her as a bad mother, even when the kids were babies, because they were always trying to get her. I remember one time she was carrying a coffee and her baby, and somebody tripped her, and the baby went this way and the coffee went that way. And
they were like, oh my gosh, she cares more about the coffee than the baby.
No. And if you
Which is not what happened.
No, she's just trying to juggle all these things, and there's a million cameras going off in her face. And it's just like, so not.
They would intentionally chase her and terrorize her and put her in a dangerous, scary situation.
Yes.
And then watch her try to fumble her way out of it with 2 infants, and then be like, look what a terrible mother she is. Mm-hmm. Ridiculous.
So she was telling the story about one time the baby fell out of his high chair when the nanny was watching it, not her. and they had to take the baby to the hospital. And she said the doctors were so rude and abusive towards her that they called CPS. And this is the beginning of the law getting enmeshed with her life. And so now she's in the CPS system, which is so hard to get out of. They will keep tabs on you forever. And, you know, I've heard a lot of bad things about the CPS system and how it's connected with child TRAFF. You know what I'm talking about?
Yep.
So these are not the best people to be bound to legally.
No, and it goes back to what we had mentioned in the last episode, which is that oftentimes when we're talking about this kind of thing, the people who are going to save you and help you are really the people that you have to look out for.
Yeah.
And it's one of the ways. So like when people are trying to figure out how conspiracy theories work or how control works or how these kind of things work, it's usually that that's where the term gaslighting like really kind of came from on the internet is they'll be doing something bad to you while at the same time telling you that they are saving you from that bad thing. So, and that's like a form of inversion, which is like a satanic thing. So just as we're talking about this, that's kind of a good thing to keep in mind is a lot of times the people who are always saying, well, we're just helping, we're just saving her, we're looking out for her. And, you know, like Kevin Federline has said that Brittany's dad saved her life. He saved her life. It's like, yeah, okay, dude. And it worked out really good for him, just totally coincidentally.
Well, she finances his whole family and his other families. So there's like upwards of 10 people in Kevin Federline's universe that she pays for everything.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. If you guys look at the amount of money that is getting paid out of her estate through this conservatorship, it's insane. It's mind-boggling the amount of money that people are making off of it.
It's crazy. And they try to stop her from using her own money to hire lawyers so she can get her own money back.
Yeah.
What?
She was never even told by her court-appointed lawyer that she could file to have the conservatorship ended.
Right.
How a lawyer is supposed to work in your best interest on your behalf and advocate for you, and he never told her
because
that
every
she
time
could file.
She did, they would stick her in a mental hospital. So okay, let's get to the details of this.
Yeah.
So she's got the family. The paparazzi are ramping it up. They're terrorizing her so much. There are laws now because of her and Princess Diana.
Yep. Which is another one, you guys.
Kevin leaves her postpartum to go party in Vegas and cheat and do whatever he's going to do.
Yeah.
Right after she had the second baby, and things get heated, and now she is being smashed in the press, and he takes off. He bounces to go party in Vegas.
He's like danced out of there.
Yeah. So this is around 2007.
Yes.
Right?
Yep. And this is about the first time that she ends up in a little place called Promises.
Promises. You're except for before she went to Promises, in 2007 on Valentine's Day, she checks into this facility called the Crossroads Center in the Caribbean. Right? Yeah. And Crossroads is founded by Eric Clapton and Richard Conte, and he is the CEO of the Priority Hospitals Group of London. I don't know if that came up in any of your...
I didn't get that one.
Okay. So Crossroads is interesting because it is a very esoteric concept. The crossroads, that's where you meet the gods. And if you ask Eric Clapton, he'll probably tell you I named it for Robert Johnson.
I was going to say, Clapton is a blues guitarist. And that's where that kind of comes from.
And he would probably say because you're at the crossroads in your life where you have to pick addiction or, life or whatever.
Yeah, for sure.
So Crossroads is super important in voodoo. All voodoo ceremonies happen at the crossroads. Robert Johnson said he met the devil at the crossroads. During her breakdown era, she was seen wearing a skirt with the words "Evil Britney" and "Voodoo" written on it.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So then when she gets home from Crossroads, she dyes her hair dark brown.
Oh, yeah. This is right before the head shaving.
Yes. And this reminds me of a story. So, you know who David Icke is?
Yeah, for sure.
And, you know, he worked with that one lady, Arizona Wilder, who talks about all of this stuff, ritual abuse and stuff like that. And she said that when she was in that, they wanted all of their goddesses to be blonde for a reason. And when she got out of it, she also dyed her hair dark brown to signify that she was no longer part of this cult. So this is when she goes to Esther's hair salon in Sherman Oaks, and she takes the shears and she buzzes her head. Mm-hmm. And you can see she's got a Star of David necklace on backwards.
Yeah, backwards.
Right. So she's got that. Esther is a big in esoterica too, because it's one of the positions on the Eastern Star of Masonry. And it means star, and it's also Madonna's Kabbalistic name.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So after that whole shaving the head ordeal, this is when she goes to Promises Malibu, right? Yep. And they asked her why she did it, and she said she was tired of people touching her and she didn't want them plugging things into her.
Yes. Even the hairdresser said, well, I think at first she said that, and then later she said, oh, I didn't hear her say that. And then this lady completely profited off of this whole thing, and she has a haircut where all she does is shave your head, and it's called the Britney, which I thought was really gross.
Oh, yeah.
You're going to take this horrible moment in this girl's life.
Yeah. Whenever she touches, people will try to get a piece, and it's so true. Like, she sings "You Want a Piece of Me," and everybody.
Yeah. One of her forced tours that she said in the conservatorship, that she was forced to do this tour against her will, is called "Piece of Me." Mm-hmm. So, yeah. So when she goes to Promises in Malibu, which this place no longer exists. It went bankrupt in 2018, and it's not there anymore. Mm-hmm. But I went back and found some really interesting, weird things about Promises. So at the time that Britney was there, first of all, her dad, Jamie, also went there in 2004 for drinking. Mm-hmm. In 2007, Britney went there. And at that time, the director of the clinical operations was this doctor named Suzanne Poland. And it says in her bio and everything from there that she's a somatic experiencing practitioner. And if you guys know what somatic experiencing is, it is a really bizarre, experimental new age psychological system that's based on Wilhelm Reich and Elsa Gindler. Oh, so I know you know who Wilhelm Reich is.
Yep.
Super creeper, very weird. Yes, he's super bizarre. He's just really out there, and he did all kinds of crazy, totally unethical, creepy stuff.
He locked his daughter in a cage.
Yeah.
Called his orgone generator.
Yeah. And he did tons of weird sexual stuff. He was constantly getting kicked out of even the creepy psych communities. If you look into the history of psychology and psychiatry, it's pretty awful. It's pretty terrible. But he was one of the worst ones. He was potentially a psychopath and very bizarre, and had lots of weird ideas about sex and energy and all these other things. So this is based on his theories of trapped energy. Mm-hmm. And one of his students, Elsa Gindler, went to the Esalen Institute in 1962. And one of her students became a teacher at Esalen. And Esalen is very heavily connected to New Age movement, psychedelics, New World Order, global elite stuff. You guys have probably heard a little bit about Esalen Institute, but it's a very bizarre place out there in California. So they were using these types of techniques there, apparently, mm-hmm. where it's very new age, ritualistic. They do body work on people. And it's very contested whether this is even considered something that should be involved in psychology or psychiatry at all. But Promises, their clinical director, is using this on people who go there, apparently. Dr. Ewan Cameron and Dr. Jolene West are both referenced in the Esalen Institute's Theory and Research Center, along with a bunch of other MK Ultra doctors. So if you go even to the Esalen Institute website now, they have like a library or a research area of their website where you can reference all of these studies from MK Ultra doctors who are using all kinds of different drugs, electroconvulsive therapy treatments, things like isolation and sleep deprivation to reprogram people and help them with trauma. Again, they're helping you with your trauma by traumatizing you further, by sleep depriving you and isolating you and restraining you and putting you on all kinds of weird drugs and Lord knows what else. So
making you get rid of your orgone energy.
Yeah.
However they're doing that.
Doing probably some weird, well, he had like all kinds of weird orgasm therapy that he would do, Wilhelm Reich. So this is the kind of stuff they're doing at this very popular Malibu rehab center that costs like $10,000 a day or something ridiculous. It's like the average stay there is like $60,000 or something. Lindsay Lohan also went there in 2007. Charlie Sheen was there twice. Winona Ryder went there, which she is now in Stranger Things, which is completely about MK Ultra.
Oh, yeah, I didn't know that.
Yeah. Wow. And ABC News said that this was like a write-up they did in the early or like mid 2000s, since so many celebrities were going there all the time. They said that it was not a luxury place to go, even though it cost so much, and that it was more of a boot camp style facility with dorms, shared bathrooms, 6:45 a.m. wake up times, and like a very regimented type of place to go. Other stars like Charlie Sheen and Danny Bonaducci said that it was a total joke and that they didn't really do any therapy there. So that all kind of together leads me to think that it could possibly be a front. The way that they did MK Ultra experiments was the CIA would set up a front organization, whether it was a school, whether it was a foundation, whether it was a research fund. They had entirely fake hospitals. They would raise funds and build totally phony baloney hospitals where they would tell people they're treating them for this or that, but really they're using them for experimentation. This seems a lot like that to me, just because of the fact that like the guy who founded it, you can't find anything on him now. Can't find him anywhere on the internet. This woman who was the clinical director, like she says she had a doctorate in psychology, that she's this double licensed therapist, and she did all of this stuff. She was the Promises director from at least 2003 to 2008. Also cannot find her anywhere. So she's either retired and dropped off the face of the earth, but she's not on social media. She's not on LinkedIn. There's nothing on Wikipedia. There's nothing when you Google her at all, except for like 2 or 3 references to this. I had to go to like the Wayback Machine archives to the Promises website from this time to even find her.
Oh, wow.
So you can't find these people now. They're ghosts. They've disappeared. They've closed the facility. So all of these things together make it feel a bit like it could be a front.
Yeah, that's super sus. That and all of the celebrities that have been in and out there.
Yeah.
And what their lives turned out to be like and where they came from.
So we're going to go into a little bit later. As we said, this is not just Brittany. There's other people they're doing this with. Lindsay Lohan, they sent her there in 2007. And then right after that, tried to commit her to the same UCLA Resnick psych ward that they committed Brittany to. And as soon, so this is the same year, they're doing this to her and to Brittany in the same year. And there was this mysterious business manager named Lou Taylor, who was instrumental in getting Brittany's conservatorship going. She also tried to do it with Lindsay Lohan. But Lindsay Lohan's dad stopped it. The mom was going to go for it completely. The mom was going to do the conservatorship, put Lou Taylor in charge of it, make her manager, and the dad stopped it. But it's like they have a process because they're doing the same thing with the same young, like Disney pop stars, right? Put them in Disney or on Nickelodeon, get them a record deal, say that they have addiction problems, put them in this facility, put them in a psych ward under a California law called 5150, where they can put you in these psych wards against your will, keep you there until a doctor says that you're safe to be released, at which point you're already in a conservatorship and there's nothing you can do about it. Same thing was done with Amanda Bynes just a few years later. They put her in the same places. Okay, so yeah, Lindsay Lohan was sent to UCLA Resnick in 2010, and then that's when they tried to get the conservatorship. Amanda Bynes was put in UCLA Resnick in 2013 and did get put in a conservatorship, which she is now trying to get out of. Same thing. So they do the same thing where they'll get these girls to, what I think is happening really is they're putting them on drugs, which make them do crazy things. And they go, look, she's crazy. We have to commit her. And then they get them into conservatorships and they have total and complete control. And then anytime they do anything that's not approved, we put you back in the facility and we reprogram you and we get you to fall in line.
Yeah. So these are the mind control slaves that are trying to break their programming. Their brains are trying to put the pieces back together, because this happens when you're an adult. They report that around 25, 30, like if you have been through this as a child, this is when the pieces start to fall into place, because it's your body's attempt to heal itself. And you have all these memories and you're putting the pieces together. And that's when they get their meat hooks into you and declare you mentally unfit. So when she's at Promises, she starts terrifying the staff by scrawling 666 on her head and screaming, I'm a fake, and saying she's the Antichrist. And later that night, she attempted to unalive herself by attaching a sheet to a light fixture, but the paramedics were called and luckily she was unhurt. So this is the incident. Oh, I forgot. She went from the hair salon to a tattoo parlor.
Yes, and she still had the backwards star on.
And she gets some lips on her wrist.
Yes.
And a cross on her hip.
Yep.
Because now she thinks in her mind, she thinks she's free because she shaved her head. She's got rid of her blonde hair. She's like, now they won't want anything to do with me because I'm ugly.
Yeah.
But they're not done with her yet. So if you can see the look in her eye when she's shaving, like she looks like she's got one over on them.
Yeah.
She doesn't look like a crazy person. She looks like a person who knows exactly what she's doing. And she's like rebelling against everything. And she has a plan. But they're not going to let her get away with it.
No.
So this is when the press declares her insane, a drug addict, unfit mother, and they keep using this word, train wreck.
Yeah.
Brittany's a train wreck. She's a train wreck. And if you know anything about Monarch programming, one of their, the insiders' ways to describe this is the freedom train, they call it. Just another like way to gaslight people because they're not free. But it does work like a train because people who were abused in it end up becoming handlers. So there's links like boxcars.
Yeah.
Right? And so when the programmed person is trying to self-destruct, it's called being thrown from the freedom train, they call it. And like we said last week in interviews, she's switching alter personalities. She talks about being completely alone, and she calls her life Groundhog Day.
Oh, I hadn't heard that.
And says, I'm sad. Like, it's really heartbreaking. So then 2012, she was being sued by a guy named Sam Lufty, and you just mentioned him in connection with Lindsay Lohan.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And
actually, that was Amanda Bynes, I believe.
Oh, yes, Amanda Bynes.
Yep.
Who was going for Lindsay?
I do have some stuff on Lindsay, but Lindsay was connected with Lou Taylor. So Sam Lutfi and Lou Taylor's a woman. She owns like a management company. And she like will weasel her way into different stars' lives.
Okay.
And like kind of one of those people that will help create a problem and then be the only person that can solve it. Mm-hmm. Sam is the same. When Brittany was really isolated after the conservatorship started, mm-hmm. he suddenly like appeared in her life and would be like hanging out with her and positioned himself as her only friend, her best friend, her mm-hmm. only friend. There was like this short period of time where she was like thinking he was the one who's going to help her out of this.
And he's the guy with the little like,
yeah, he's got the little
thing.
Yeah. What do they call that?
I don't know. It's just the line.
Like a little Fu Manchu thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just the little stupid strip down there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Shady looking guy. And it did not turn out that he was helpful. And he is the one that when Amanda Bynes was in all kinds of trouble, he flew her. She was in Europe, I think, and he flew her from there to LA and had the police and paramedics there ready to take her into custody as soon as she got off the plane to have her committed
mm-hmm.
and have her put in the conservatorship. Lou Taylor was the one that Brittany said in emails had been stalking her.
I wrote that down.
She was afraid that this person might hurt her mother, that she was obsessed with her, that she was crazy and trying to like get into her house, get into her life. And she was like emailing her lawyers saying, I've got a serious problem. This person is stalking me. It's very scary.
Yeah.
I'm not worried about my dad, but I think that this lady could find my mom and I'm really worried about it. And this is the person who kind of talked Jamie Spears into this conservatorship thing, allegedly.
Yes.
That's what they say.
In 2007, you're right. She writes a letter to her lawyer, Gary Stiffelman, about a crazy stalker she had named Lou Taylor, who kept saying, Brittany is possessed and she needs to come and kill the spirits.
Yeah.
So she wants to come and give Brittany an exorcism.
Yeah, she's another one of these like evangelical end timesy ladies who, like, she reminds me of the cult women that you and Jay have covered, mm-hmm. where they claim to like be able to see things others can't and know things others can't. And it's like, I'm going to tell you about the demons and get them out of you and all this stuff. But at the same time has this super shady business talent management company.
Well,
and is involved in getting all these stars into conservatorships.
Lou Taylor, she's her business manager. TriStar Entertainment is her company.
Yes.
And this group is accused of helping Brittany's dad mirror her iCloud to spy on Brittany. Right?
Yeah.
And so Lou Taylor also visited Lindsay Lohan and was part of her conservatorship. That was where I was confused.
Oh, okay. Yeah. No, I think, yeah, that's true. She did.
And so Lou Taylor is connected to this thing called Mercy Ministries. And when Britney's conservatorship happened, her charity that she had, the Britney Spears Foundation, was broken up and donated to two charities. One was Mercy Ministries, Lou Taylor's husband's church. So Lou Taylor has a husband who's a Calvary Chapel preacher.
Yep.
Called Mercy Multiplied Ministries in Nashville. And when you go to their website, they say they serve young women with eating disorders, drug and alcohol addiction, depression, unplanned pregnancy, physical and sexual abuse, and TRAFF. And they deal with areas of demonic oppression, demonic activity, and exorcisms. So this is getting so bizarre. Lou Taylor, who is this person? And it's like all of these goblins are always surrounding Brittany. And when she takes pictures with people, it's so crazy because she looks like an bright angel, like a beautiful blonde, angelic woman. And all of these people just look so gross, like her dad, Lou Taylor. And if you see her and her like squad, it's disgusting.
It's true. Like everybody in her squad always looks like, I always say that these people have the same face. They got the same, especially when they start to get like older, and everyone's like, well, they're getting older. And I'm like, no. Like David Rockefeller, Henry Kissinger, these people, when they get old, they look like their skin suit failed them decades ago. And they're just like still walking around in it. And these people, it's like a melted face effect. There's like something wrong where it doesn't look normal. They don't, it's not like my grandma looks. It's not like I look in my 40s or anything. It's like something wrong with their face. It's like things are not working out. It's hard to explain to people, but if you know that look, you know the look. And so many people around her have that look.
Let's see. So, the day after she did the shaving the head thing, she tried to go party at the Roxy and was admitted to Sinai Medical Center and then went to Promises. She gets out, she tries to go see Kevin in San Fernando, and this is when she attacked the paparazzi with the umbrella.
Yes.
They were on a road trip. They were somewhere out, stopped for gas and driving. She's like, I just want to go see my kids and my husband. I'm trying to get to them and they won't leave her alone. So she attacks the thing with the umbrella. So all of this behavior is what makes it look like it's okay to commit her and to take away her rights and everything. Right?
Yeah.
So now
I feel like they push these people and put them in situations on purpose, which again, gaslighting, if you guys do have people in your life that are like narcissistic or bad people or like borderline personality types or something like that, that's exactly what they'll do. They'll push you to the point that you freak out and then they go, see, you're crazy. You're crazy.
Yeah. And then they'll play calm.
Yeah. And they'll just be like, oh, I'm really praying for you and you just need help. And we just really want to help you.
Yeah. Because they'll push you. They know the buttons that will make you angry and they'll do it in a calm way. And like, you are so right. When you explode and then they go back, see, she's crazy.
Yeah. They're like, oh.
They also, she ran over someone's toe when she was trying to get away. So this was another reason for them to take control of her. She tries to make this new album called Blackout.
Yeah. Which everybody feels like is her best stuff in a way. Like it's her, I think it's one of the only albums that is remotely her. Didn't she produce it? I think. Yeah.
And so this goes together with the trauma-based mind control too, because when you're switching personalities, the other one is blackout, right? Missing time.
Yeah.
So that makes a lot of sense. In 2008, she locks herself in the house with one of her sons and the police came and took her away in an ambulance. Do you remember that?
Yes. And this is another situation where they set her up because she had like a nanny or somebody like that in the house with her. And the nanny person, this is what Brittany says in these documents for the conservatorship where she's explaining what happened to her. She says, no, the person who was there, like this nanny or assistant or whoever it was telling her that they knew this was going to happen. They were going to do this. So they had like fire department and police come and Brittany didn't know what was going on. And the assistant babysitter nanny person was like, oh, take the baby and go in the bathroom and lock yourself in there until I find out what's going on. And she was like, okay. So she went in there and did that. And she says that there was somebody telling her that there was something dangerous going on outside and to lock herself in the bathroom with the baby for safety reasons while she found out what was going on. So Brittany's like, I wasn't trying to not return the baby. They were telling me something was going on and that I had to do that for safety reasons. And since she had paparazzi and crazy people break into her yard and different things like that in the past, makes total sense that she would be like, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
And go
she
hide.
was totally set up for that.
Yeah.
So they take her away in the stretcher and then guess who goes to visit her in the hospital?
Dr. Phil?
Dr. Phil. What is he doing? Dr. Phil, who's connected to Oprah.
Yes. And lots of other shady, creepy stuff.
Yeah.
Like he was sending kids to these camps, like the one where they sent Paris Hilton to, where she said she was subjected to horrific abuse. And Paris Hilton named Dr. Phil as one of these people. And when she did that, you guys remember the Cash Me Outside girl?
Yeah.
Bad Baby?
Yeah.
She came out.
OnlyFans millionaire now.
Yeah, I know. That's very unfortunate, but she came out after Paris did and said that when Dr. Phil sent her to one of those get these wayward teenagers straight camps, that she was abused as well. she said that they would, and they all say the same thing, which is they lock them in isolation and they won't let them sleep.
Mm-hmm.
And in MK Ultra experiments, some of the best documentation we have of what they were doing is from Dr. Louis Jolyon West, aka Jolly. And in court testimony he gave, in his journals, in his documents, he repeatedly said that what worked better than drugs or hypnosis or anything was isolation and sleep deprivation. That you could take a perfectly sane person, and if you isolate them and deprive them of sleep, you can do almost anything to their mind.
Mm-hmm.
And so all these young girls and young stars that they send to these scare them straight type of camps to like reform them come out saying they put me in isolation. They wouldn't let me sleep. They would withhold food, things like that. And then there's like sexual abuse allegations as well. But I just find it I don't think that's something that if all these girls were just like narcissistic, bad girls, right? That they would all say they put me in isolation.
Yeah.
That doesn't seem like something. I could see them making like inappropriate claims or things like that, but to say that they were all isolated and sleep deprived is very bizarre to me.
Mm-hmm.
But that is something that once she said that, there were other people who have come out and said, yes, the camps that Dr. Phil was sending us all to would put us in isolation for like days and days and days and withhold sleep and food
mm-hmm.
to get us to comply.
Wasn't there a study done? They tried to do a study on sleep deprivation, but they had to quit because they figured out it was like one of the most horrible tortures you could do to somebody.
Yeah, and you can kill people.
Yeah.
You can kill people with not that much sleep deprivation. I have a friend who's actually a clinician who works with like military and first responders who have to work like 24-hour shifts and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And he's done tons of research on how bad sleep deprivation is for you. He's like, you can kill people way faster with sleep deprivation than you can with starvation.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it doesn't take like that much. And so you can really push people to like the edge where they're desperate to do anything if you sleep deprive them enough.
So now Brittany is in the hospital. She's in UCLA. Dr. Phil goes to see her to convince her to stay in the treatment, but the family gets pissed off at him because he says he wants to do a show with Brittany.
Yeah.
Now Dr.
Apparently he wasn't authorized to say that.
Yeah. My light just went out. Oh, well. She was kept in the hospital during her first conservatorship hearing. So they waived all her rights.
Yep.
They kicked out her lawyer that she hired.
Yeah, because
was incompetent to even hire a lawyer.
Yeah.
So all of her constitutional rights and all the due process is just thrown out the window.
Yep.
And this is something we're going to see more of with people like AJ.
Yep.
AJ Jones.
Yes. Alex.
Yeah.
Yep.
And this reminded me of that movie. I don't know if you've seen this. It's called I Care a Lot. Have you seen that?
Uh-huh.
So it is about how they use the court system to abuse elderly people. Like if somebody has a lot of assets and they are single and they're elderly, they will have like a court appointed carer come to their house and assess them.
Yeah.
Declare them mentally unfit to take care of themselves and liquidate all of their assets.
Yeah.
And the court is all in on it. The judge is in on it. The lawyers are in on it. So if you haven't seen that movie, you should really go watch that because it's like a behind the scenes look at how they just rob people through the court system.
Yeah. And I wonder about this judge. Just because there was things that went on, how they did this with her still in the hospital. It was like they already knew what the verdict was going to be. It was like they had already planned it out.
Yeah.
So it's very, very suspicious.
So then they use her kids as leverage and they tell her, if you do everything we say, then we won't take your kids away. And if you keep working, um, they're just two little carrots on a stick. And that's all she wants. You could tell she just wants to be with her kids.
Yeah.
But they're splitting up the custody. They're taking away all her rights. Now she only has visitation with them, like
court supervised
visitation. Exactly. She gets to work now with Dr. Luke, who worked with Kesha and Katy Perry.
Oh my gosh,
and then, guy. Yeah.
The guy that Kesha says absolutely like assaulted her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She gets to work with Jonas Ackerland, and we'll talk about the videos themselves in a little bit. Let's see. Oh, and then in 2012, I'm trying to go chronologically. These disturbing stories and testimonies began surfacing about what her life is like.
Yeah.
And there was this nanny named Lourdes Torres. She testified that she had been emotionally manipulated throughout her court-mandated conservatorship. And she claims she quit her job because she was so disturbed by what she saw happening to Britney. And some of the allegations includes Mr. Lufty drugging Britney, yelling at her, cutting off her phone line, removing her cell phone chargers, and saying they control everything she does. From her business managers to her security guards. So,
yeah.
Then she does the circus tour. Do you remember that album, Circus?
Yes.
Just like a circus.
Again, and this is another thing. She's always in cages.
Yes.
In circus, but throughout her career, performances, videos, she's always in cages.
By her own request, too.
Yeah.
Right.
It's like it's way too much to be coincidental.
Yeah.
Like nobody has that big of a fetish for cage imagery, I don't think. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So when she's supposed to be so incompetent, and they say things like she has dementia.
Yeah.
And stuff like that. But she's going on the circus tour. She's going on Glee. She's got a clothing line for Kohl's.
How I Met Your Mother.
Yeah.
She was on that show. Yeah. She's completely incompetent to run her own life, but totally competent to work like a back-breaking work schedule.
To do a world tour.
Do world tours, major TV shows, live performances all the time. Like even through the holidays.
Radio appearances, guest interviews, all of this. And then she does the I Am Femme Fatale era.
Yeah.
And what is a femme fatale? It's like a seductive woman who lures men into dangerous or compromising situations.
Yes.
Like a spy.
Yeah. Like a honeypot.
Exactly. Espionage, which is in so many of her videos.
So many.
When she was talking about the video that she filmed for the femme fatale, she said it was filmed in an underground meat plant.
Ooh.
She says it was so grimy and gross and smelled like poop and sweat. It was disgusting.
We should also mention, as we're talking about the femme fatale thing, she briefly dated a model named Isaac Cohen around 2008-ish, 2000. It was like right after the breakup with K-Fed. And he, if you look him up, he's a model, but he's also a photographer, and he's connected with all these other modeling agency people, one of whom is Rachel Chandler. If you guys remember Rachel Chandler, before she basically got scrubbed from the internet, she was one of Epstein Jeffries' procurers and handlers. And people have said like that her last name, Chandler, isn't her real last name. It's like C handler for child handler.
Yeah.
And there's multiple pictures of her all over that you can still find with all kinds of famous people, including like Bill Clinton and Madonna and Prince Andrew and all these people. There's also, and I was trying to like find something to really like validate that it's real, but sometimes that's hard to do with photos. There is a photo from this era of Britney with Isaac Cohen and with Rachel Chandler together, and it's allegedly at one of these parties.
Oh wow.
So there's that that modeling agencies are a notorious front for child TRAFF. you know, and so this guy magically appears, you know, dates her for a minute. Oh, and he's one of the ones that said a bunch of horrible things about her being like wild in bed and being like a nympho, and that's all she ever wanted to do, and that's the only time she was happy is when she was doing that, and afterwards she would revert to like a childlike state and things. So
well, could it be one of her altars?
Yeah. Well, I mean,
beta altars.
Yeah, that's a big part of Monarch programming, is to make them sex kittens on the one hand, who are like have voracious sexual appetites, but who also act like innocent children. And that's the thing they do with a ton of pop stars, bring them out as innocent girls, like innocent young girls, and then turn them into these sexy vixens. And it's, you see that with like Miley, you see that with Katy Perry, you see it with Christina, you see it with all these girls. They do the Selena Gomez, they do it with all of them, where it's like, hi, I'm cute young girl and I'm so innocent and adorable. And then it's like, ooh, I'm exploring my sexuality. And then it's like, now I'm a vixen. And then it like even goes into, like you were saying last episode, BDSM territory, where it's like, I want you to smack me, I want you to hit me, I want you to choke me type of stuff. And there's tons of songs out in the last few years by female artists with this theme. And I noticed that before I had even like put it together with this, but like, because I would always be telling my kids, I'm like, don't listen to this stuff. It's like, it's not normal. It's not a normal thing for a girl to want to get beaten and physically abused in an intimate relationship. That's not normal. I don't know why this is trendy and cool now, but you see it especially with like all the female rappers. They're all singing and rapping about wanting to get choked and hit and beat and everything. And it's like,
anything about S&M, like if a guy told me he liked that would be immediately no. Like, no dating, no friendship.
Thanks. No.
Well, her and Rihanna did that song S&M, and her looks sometimes with like leather biker hat and the studded look, I mean, straight out of YMCA era, you know, homosexual fashion stuff.
And if you guys know anything about the San Francisco gay activism scene in the 60s and 70s, they had BDSM leather clubs that would actually have lobbying groups that would lobby Congress for like homosexual rights and man boy love rights. Oh yeah, I'm working on a piece on that for my Substack, because it's another one of those things where you start reading it and you go, that's weird, and then you start reading more and you're like, whoa hold on, this is like really crazy stuff. And of course always connected to like very famous, powerful, high level people as soon as you look into it.
So they've got her in the meat market and Smells Like Poop and Sweat. I actually watched the Femme Fatale live performance.
Okay, I've never seen that one.
And it starts out, she's escaping from a high security prison. So there she is behind bars again. She's looking glamorous, by the way. She's in like a sparkly unitard. When the guy's pursuing her, she breaks out of the prison. She comes out on a weird throne made of like metal screen doors. She is dancing in cages. So this performance is so overtly sexual, and so is a lot of them, that it kind of almost gets boring.
Yeah.
Like,
you're like, yeah, we get it.
Can you see a crotch and a booty and a pole dance? And it's just kind of like, it's not even scandalous or titillating anymore. It's just like, you're just doing your job. It's just like, shake your butt in someone's face. So
that's so true.
So the spies throughout this, the storyline of the concert, there's a guy who's like hunting Britney now that she's escaped the facility. He's just like a greasy guy in a bunker with all these TVs surveilling her and like trying to catch her or whatever. And there is a montage of all the guys she's killed in her videos.
What?
Yeah. So like Toxic and a couple others, where she's the assassin. So they show the clips of those. Will.i.am is in this.
Isn't that where It's Britney Bitch came from? When
Probably.
she did her collabs with him.
Oh.
I'm pretty sure it is.
I don't know. I'm not a big Black Eyed Peas fan. I'm not a will.i.am fan. I think they're kind of hacky, but
I do too.
Yeah. She picks an audience member and gives him a lap dance. And then she sings that song, If You Seek Amy.
Yeah. I remember that. And I remember a lot of people not putting together what that meant. It's an acronym if you haven't figured it out.
He says, all the boys and all the girls are dying to If You Seek Amy. So just think about that. Say it 3 times fast.
Yeah, right? Exactly.
And she's singing this as Marilyn Monroe. And we talked about that last time because Marilyn Monroe was one of the first presidential model mind control slaves. So
she was my introduction to this stuff when I was in junior high. Yeah, I grew up mostly with my grandmas and watched a lot of old Hollywood movies, and I was super fascinated with all the old Hollywood starlets. And when my mom would take us to the library and let us pick books, I would always pick books about them. And I got a bunch of books about her, not having any idea about, like, because I was in 6th grade. I vividly remember this. And reading about her suspicious death, how the autopsy was weird and botched, and her connections with the president and all the different theories. An 11-year-old me really thought I was just going to go back to the library and get more books and like solve this case and figure out what happened. But yeah, it was like my first introduction to the idea that like maybe a lot of this stuff isn't all what it seems, because you have like the Elton John song Candle in the Wind, you know, and you have these tributes to her, and she still makes so much money. Marilyn Monroe's estate, it's a lot like Elvis, where it just churns out eternal money.
Yeah. And Britney will be too.
Yeah. And it's like the last interview that Marilyn did before she died, she was talking about how she finally felt like she had so many parallels with Britney about like feeling controlled, not being able to really do what she wanted, not being able to be with who she wanted, not being able to have a family. And she was like finally thinking she was getting to a point in her life where she could do what she wanted. And then she commits suicide, right? Or accidentally overdoses.
I was gonna start out the show asking if her life is in danger now. And
I definitely think it is.
Yeah.
Because if this, right now they can kind of milk it as like a way to keep her stuff selling and keep her in the limelight. But if it ever, I feel like if it ever gets to a point where she's worth more unalive, oh yeah, like why wouldn't they? It's happened with so many people, I think.
So Marilyn Monroe was in Playboy, and I found this recently. I don't know if you've ever seen that.
No.
Monarch.
Wow.
Playboy. Isn't that crazy?
That's crazy. Yes. And we know that Playboy has tons of connections to the CIA. Gloria Steinem comes to mind.
And so does the paparazzi.
Yeah.
And the tabloids.
Yes.
He said something a long time ago about he had a solid connection with the tabloids and the CIA. And I was like, I couldn't find it anywhere, but I know it's there. So maybe I'll find it one day. But I know that like tabloids and paparazzi and CIA.
It would be just the ideal place to put someone.
Yeah.
And Britney would always say, like, for one thing, she didn't want to go to promises. Like, she specifically said she didn't want to go there because she knew they'd find her there. She said, they will find me there. They'll know I'm there. Like, I don't want to go there. Can I go somewhere else? And they were like, no, you have to go here.
Yeah.
And she would say that she knew that they would always know where she was. And it's not, I mean, I know they get a lot of money for getting a picture of her and things like that back then, but they would just always know where she was.
Her dad would call him all the time and tell him, like,
oh, nice.
Yeah, because that was one of the ways to keep tabs on her, you know, if she got away from the group controlling her, they'd just call up the paparazzi and tell them, and they find her. And so this Femme Fatale concert, she has the spirit of all the Femme Fatales in history, they said. And then suddenly pyramids rise out of the sand. I don't know where the Egyptian imagery comes into this, but now she is an Egyptian queen. And I do have a pic of that.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So that's femme fatale. And then she is shown in like a seedy motel with multiple passports and aliases and identities, right? And then she comes out in her studded biker look, singing "Hit Me, Baby." She sings S&M. She becomes a master spy and breaks into the antagonist's lair and gets the jump on him. So he's been stalking her this whole time, and she turned it around. I think this is part of her imagination, like she's going to get them someday, right?
Yeah.
With all of her intelligence training.
Yeah.
And then it's time to fight some ninjas. Relatable. I don't know. And then
were they just trying to get every cliche thing into like one set?
I don't know where the ninjas came from, but
and then she'll be Cleopatra, and then there will be ninjas. And
okay, and then Nicki Minaj comes out and sings with her, and somehow Britney is taken to the underworld, and the song is about dancing until the world ends. Have you heard that?
Yeah.
Song?
Yep.
And she emerges from the underground with angel wings.
Okay.
So that's the end of that weird concert peek into Britney's psyche, if you will.
Lovely.
Yeah.
So that was 2012?
This
was that later?
How was 2011. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, and then do you remember all her fragrances? Like,
yes.
She is worth so much money because of these fragrances are so popular.
Yeah, she has a ton of them, and they're owned by Elizabeth Arden's company, which I have a history in the beauty industry, and so I know a little bit about the history of these companies and who owns them and how they do things. And that stuff can get a little bit dark and weird too. But when I see them putting out like 14 fragrances with her name on it, and she doesn't own any of it, I mean, she gets some money, but it's not much.
Mm-hmm.
These companies like make a ton of money off of just putting her name on it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and they're all like fantasy and fantasy this and fantasy that. And
I used to wear Curious when I was like 21, 22. I'd wear that, and my brother was like, "You smell like a baby hooker." Like,
wow, how appropriate.
That's probably spot on though, like what they were trying to, like, create, right?
Yeah, probably. Baby hooker.
So this is 2012, 2011. She goes on X Factor as a judge, but she is still declared mentally unfit to testify on her own behalf. So she can't even go and give a testimony, but she can go be a judge on X Factor.
Makes no sense at all.
Right?
It's absurd. And they do it right in front of the whole world, and nobody does anything about it.
Yeah. So did you ever see that episode of South Park called Britney's New Look?
Yes, I did.
It's so dark. Do you want to talk about
it? It is. Well, yeah, it is. And like Andy watched the last one we did, and he was like, wow, that South Park episode was like way more real life than you would think. But he's like, they kind of nailed it. Like they kind of, he's like, and he said, sometimes I think they know a lot more than you would think they do.
I think they do too.
Because they do get a lot of this stuff right, like way ahead of time.
Well, you've seen that one with I think it was like the Jonas Brothers, where Mickey Mouse was abusing
where Mickey Mouse was evil.
Yeah.
Andy loves to do that Mickey Mouse impression. It's his favorite. But no, that was super bizarre and very spot on. It was like very, like they show people absolutely, treating her exactly the way that we've just been describing this whole show.
Mm-hmm.
And telling people that she's not okay, and telling people that something's wrong, and people just keep pushing her and pushing her and pushing her. And even like the kids, even Cartman is just like, yeah, whatever. We're just going to sneak in there and get a picture or whatever. Like some of the kids want to help. I think it's been a long time since I watched this. Like a couple of the kids want to help, but Eric's just like, what, because he's a jerk. He's like the asshole.
Mm-hmm.
And she like blows her head off in front of them.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, well, she's still alive, and we'll just keep putting her out there. We'll just put sexy stuff on her and keep putting her out there. And people still And the public, that's the thing. I think the main message is like the public doesn't even care that half of her head is missing.
Yeah.
They still just want to make her dance and make her entertain them. And they still just want to like, and they do talk in that episode about how we love to build up celebrities to destroy them.
Yeah, and it's really poignant too, because I remember that one performance at the VMAs where they were like, "Oh, she's fat and she's out of it," and blah blah blah. She wasn't even that heavy.
She wasn't.
But she wasn't as lithe as maybe like her teenage years. But like, why do you have to put her in a bikini?
Yeah, well, I remember watching that and saying, why did they put her in that outfit? Like who, and like, because I did hair, it wasn't that long after the head shaving. So her natural hair was maybe like that long or something. And they were trying to put extensions in it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, why wouldn't you just do a really high-end wig? Why would you do extensions that are like obvious and you can see like the beaded extensions?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just looking at it like, even as a stylist, going, who did this to her? Like who put her in this outfit? She can barely freaking walk down the stairs. And they're just like, go out there anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Did they think it was going to go well? It's hard to believe that they thought it was going to go well.
I think you mentioned she was on lithium at that time.
Yes. So this is when Dr. Timothy Benson enters the scene and switches her from whatever medications they had her on before, which she said she didn't like them, but she could at least handle them. He took her off everything immediately and put her on like a high dose of lithium. Lithium is a drug. I mean, everybody knows the Nirvana song, right? And we all know what happened to Kurt Cobain and the weird stuff going on there. And Courtney Love had some kind of connection to this too that I can't remember now, but she kept coming up in the research and I was like, dang, she's kind of in everything too. But
you mean Courtney Love?
Yeah, Courtney Love. Is that what I said?
You said Britney.
Oh, whoops, sorry. But they put her on lithium and she said that she felt totally out of it and like she was drunk all the time on this. And I had said in the previous episode, I had found a lot of documents where they were using lithium to suppress alters in people who they had induced DID or MPD in. So that kind of makes sense. And the thing about Dr. Benson, we talked a little bit last time about how he was a bit of a cornball and had all this he had like a self-help empire with all these books, and like he contributed to some really shady foundation that looked super scammy to me that also doesn't exist anymore. And the person who ran that, you can't find him anymore. His Twitter's been abandoned right about the time that Dr. Benson died. So Dr. Timothy Benson had been her psychiatrist for years when he passed away, right when the conservatorship started. And the reason it's so suspicious, and if you just Google Dr. Timothy Benson, all you'll find is article after article about how weird it is that he just dropped dead right before he was supposed to go to court, because they were investigating him specifically because they were worried about the medications that he had her on. And they were investigating that to find out if what he was doing was like protocol or if it was weird.
This is the guy that when he died, Britney said she dropped down on her knees and thanked God that he died. Right?
Yes, if that tells you anything.
Yeah.
So this guy came in at some point during this conservatorship stuff to help her. I've heard that Jamie Spears, the dad, is the one who found him and hired him. And the reason that he ties Britney into the larger MKUltra conspiracy stuff is he was the director of both Fernside and the residents at Brooke McLean Hospital. So McLean Hospital is one of the biggest psychiatric hospitals in the country. They have several campuses. The main hospital is at Belmont, Massachusetts, and he was a director for 2 of their facilities, and he was also a clinical instructor at Harvard Medical School for 10 years. And McLean is notorious for being connected to MKUltra. It's one of the hospitals that comes up time and time again if you're reading anything about those programs. He died right before the conservators hearing as he was being investigated for the drugs he was prescribing her. At first, they did not say what a cause of death was for him, and then later they just said it was an aneurysm. But he was only 48 years old. didn't have any health problems that anyone knows of. He had 2 little kids, and all of a sudden, all his stuff is wiped from the internet. Like I said, he had all these books. The only one you can go and find on Amazon right now is the one that he did with like a group of other doctors right before he died, like weeks before he died. The rest of it's all scrubbed. His website is gone. It's hard to find any mention of him at Harvard now. It's like a lot of these people that are connected with this just seem to disappear from the internet, which is not normal, you guys. Like, you can Google people and find them forever and find everything they've ever done, as you know. So it's very weird, like, that they would just take all of his stuff down. But more to the point, he was a director of 2 of these notorious residence, like inpatient facilities. And McLean has a ton of connections. I'm going to try to like give you guys an overview of them and make them make some sense for why they connect to this. So one of the doctors who was made famous, who comes out of McLean Hospital, is Dr. Marsha Linehan. She created something called dialectical behavior therapy, which is now being heavily pushed by Selena Gomez. Selena Gomez went to this facility a few years ago. She says she was diagnosed with bipolar disorder there, and that they used this dialectical behavior therapy and that it was the most helpful thing ever. And so McLean gave her an award. They gave her the McLean Award, and she went to like this ceremonial dinner where she gave a speech about how helpful it was and how great McLean is and how much she recommends this dialectical behavior therapy. In that speech, she thanked David O. Russell for introducing her to the wonderful people at McLean. If you go look up who David O. Russell is, he is a producer who's done a bunch of popular movies and TV shows, some that Selena has been in, and he was accused in 2011 of sexually assaulting his transgender niece, which back in 2011, that's like 11 years ago, there was not a lot of people who had fully transitioned as teenagers at that point.
Yeah.
But this guy had a niece who had, and he did not deny it. That's the thing, is like, this went to court and he said, well, yeah, I did it, but she wanted me to. And I was curious about like the bodily changes. And I wanted to see. So I started feeling around, but I thought that she wanted, and this person was underage at the time. So it did end up getting dropped, as these things often do. Like, you just pay off the person and then they drop the charges. But Selena Gomez thanked this guy publicly for introducing her to the people at McLean Hospital. Dr. Marsha Linehan, who came up with this therapy that Selena recommends, was committed to the Institute for Living as a child in 1961. She was like 16 or 17. So this doctor, you guys, it blows my mind. They committed her as a teenager because she now self-diagnoses herself as having had borderline personality disorder as a teenager, and said she was one of the most disturbed people that was committed to the Institute for Living. It's a mental hospital that's in Hartford, Connecticut. She was committed there for 26 months, so just over 2 years, and subjected to electroconvulsive therapy, Thorazine, Librium, and other very powerful drugs, as well as isolation and sleep deprivation in the 60s, which was at the height
electroshock is another staple of the MK Ultra.
Yes. And this was 1961 to 63 that she was there, which was considered like the height of this experimentation. When she got out, she said she never again had to be on any sort of drugs for her mental illness. So if she was truly one of the most disturbed and suicidal people who was admitted there, it would be very rare for her to never need any medication again. So after she gets out of the mental hospital, she attends Loyola University and earns a PhD there in psychology. It took her a while. She was there from like 1965 to 1971. While she was there, the Catholic priests from the Boston area who would later be involved in all of the high profile sex scandals and abuse scandals were being sent to Loyola. So what they would do in New York and Boston and Philadelphia, when they would find out that these priests were doing something abusive.
Well, Loyola is a Jesuit place, isn't it?
Yes, it is. So they would send them there for some reason to protect them from prosecution. And it was like known by the people at Loyola that this was going on. And this lady happened to be there attending school and going through the PhD program at the same time, and says she was a Catholic. So she became the student of a Catholic Jesuit priest who taught her Zen meditation. This particular priest was named Willis Jaeger, and he was a student of Hugo Lassalle, who was one of the Jesuit priests who was at Hiroshima when the atom bomb went off. Whoa. And he miraculously survived Hiroshima.
Oh, dude.
And built, yeah, whoa, dude, is right. He built the, what's the name of it? Oh, the World Peace Memorial Cathedral, which is like this big UN globalist Jesuit project where they built this really bizarre modern art world peace cathedral at the site of the Hiroshima bombing. But so this lady happened to be going there. So they had put her in this hospital that sounds totally MK Ultra. She goes to college at Loyola, gets in with the Jesuit priests, starts studying Zen Buddhism practices under them, and develops this dialectical behavior therapy that she uses at McLean. Also, the Institute for Living, where Dr. Linehan had been placed for 26 months as a teenager, is also the institution that they sent all the Catholic priests to in order to avoid prosecution. They would send them there for treatment and so that they wouldn't get arrested and prosecuted. So keep this in mind because it's all going to come back together later.
Okay.
So McLean Hospital runs Bridgewater State Hospital in Massachusetts, which has long been suspected of doing mind control experimentation. There's been multiple lawsuits from the 70s up through the 2000s, as recently as 2014, of patients who were there who were either killed or disabled or otherwise like horrifically injured by whatever was going on there. They even did a 1967 documentary. So again, MK Ultra starts around 1951 to 53, and even the government says it went up through 73. I'm 99% sure they continued it after that and just renamed it. But in 1967, they did a documentary that you can still find online today. It's called The Titicut Follies. And this documentary showed abuses of isolation, drugging, sleep deprivation, patients being forced to strip naked, and even some deaths from forced feeding and people who were too drugged to swallow food.
Yikes.
It was outlawed at the time, and now it has been released and actually won awards and things like that. And they said that they did reforms at Bridgewater State Hospital due to this documentary. However, that did not happen. In 1987, another major lawsuit was brought by the families of 7 inmates who died in the hospital. They sued not only the hospital, but also the state of Massachusetts, including then Governor Michael Dukakis, who ran for president.
Yeah, I remember that.
And they won millions of dollars in damages for these families. And it was again announced that, just like with the documentary, thanks to this lawsuit, we're going to reform the hospital. We're going to fix all these problems. We totally didn't know this was happening. But again, no reforms were made. There have been multiple other lawsuits in 2009, 2013, 2014 for people who were abused or died in similar manners at Bridgewater State Hospital. You might find it very interesting to know that the lawyer who brought the 1987 lawsuit against Michael Dukakis and won $3 million for these families, he happened to be the same lawyer that represented the Catholic priest abuse scandal victims and started the 9/11 fund for families of 9/11 victims. Maybe I should say Big Nine victims.
Yeah.
So in McLean, which ran Bridgewater, where all these scandals happened, in 2006, that president of McLean tried to unalive himself after it was exposed that he had been sexually involved with patients. So nothing has changed there. Basically, as far as we can tell, it's still just as bad as it was. And Timothy Leary, the infamous LSD distributor who also worked out of Harvard, had a network of schools that he would distribute LSD to for MK Ultra experiments, and that included McLean and Bridgewater Hospital. Also coming out of McLean was Dr. John Clark, who graduated from Harvard in 1953, right at the onset of MK Ultra. He worked at McLean and Bridgewater while working at Harvard from 1953 all the way through the 1990s. He was connected with the Jonestown mass unaliving. He actually testified in some of the proceedings about that, and is considered an expert on cults. And he founded the American Family Foundation, which has been renamed the International Cultic Studies Association in 1979 with Raytheon founder Kay Barney and Louis Jolyon West.
So you've got what's it called? Military industrial complex mixed up in this now?
Yes,
Raytheon?
totally. Yes.
Psychiatric hospitals. I'm thinking of, the classic like psych hospital that's an old 1800s building.
Yeah.
And it's like storming and there's lightning, and then it's just they're torturing patients inside and they're like doing electrotherapy.
Yeah.
And pretty much the worst place you could ever end up. Like that's my
fear. That is actually McLean.
Okay.
So McLean Hospital is over 200 years old.
Yeah.
And it was founded, it's named for, I forget the guy's first name, but a guy named McLean, who was another like very prominent like politician. And there's it's not a city, it's like an unincorporated living area right outside DC by all the naval bases and all of that. It's the third most expensive place you can live in the entire country. The Bidens have lived there, the Obamas have lived there, all of the like top brass like Pentagon guys live there. It's also called McLean. It's not a county, it's not a city, it's like a unincorporated area where these people live that's so expensive that it's basically impossible to live there unless you are one of these guys. And so this hospital was named after him. And yes, we have like Raytheon involved. It's I know this is a lot, you guys, so my plan is to like write this all up into an essay, cite everything and source it for you so that in case you think I'm crazy, you can go read that and check all my source material and see where I'm getting all this information from. And like, if you're listening to this going, whoa, that's like a lot, then you can kind of put it together that way. Cause it is a lot. It's like pretty bananas.
Brittany's doctor, Timothy Benson, is basically like running Arkham asylums.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
Places of horror.
Yeah.
And also doing what to her? Giving her injections, drugs? We don't know yet.
Yeah. We don't know. We know lithium.
Yeah.
And we know that she was so relieved when she found out he died that she dropped to her knees and thanked God.
Yeah.
So.
Poor Brittany Jean.
I know. And Marilyn's name was Norma Jean.
Oh, yeah. So you were telling me about somebody named Archibald.
Yes.
Where does he fit into this?
So when we look at that lawyer I was telling you guys about. So when
What's
Bridgewater, his name is Eric McLeish.
McLeish.
Okay. Yes. MacLiesh.
Okay. So he's her lawyer for her conservatorship.
No, he's the lawyer for the lawsuit that was brought against Bridgewater by all of the patients who were like dying and being tortured there in 1987. So not a lawyer for Brittany, but a lawyer for families who wanted to bring a suit against McLean and Bridgewater, because McLean owns and runs Bridgewater facility.
Did you ever see that American Horror Story with the
asylum?
Yeah. So that's what I think when I think of these places. It's just like a bunch of nurse ratchets that are evil. Like,
that's what it sounds like, because I read through some of the like testimony of the parents, and like there was one lady that talked about how her son, who was schizophrenic, had been restrained and tied up for like years, and that he had deteriorated to the point where he had lost 40 some pounds. He could barely talk. They couldn't visit him very often, and when they did, he was in such terrible shape and totally drugged out of his mind And these were the families that wanted to sue this place. So the attorney who said he would help them bring a class action lawsuit was Eric McLeish. He's a Boston area attorney, and he represented the Bridgewater families. That was 7 families in 1987. He represented some more families again later, I think in like 2011, for the same place. And he also represented the victims of the Catholic priest scandal in 1992. And he also started the Massachusetts Big Nine Event Fund for survivors of Big Nine victims, like their families. So 3 like massive lawsuits that would bring total public outrage and total public outcry against very helpless people, that would have been some of the biggest cases of the last 40 years. It's the same attorney, which wouldn't be so weird, except, you guys, that he is his father. So this attorney, Eric McLeish, his father was Roderick McLeish, who was a graduate of the University of Chicago, which is a Rockefeller institution. He was a journalist for CBS and NPR, and basically a propagandist. Doesn't sound too bad, right? But then we look at Grandpa, the grandfather of Eric McLeish. His dad's dad was a Yale graduate, a Harvard graduate, a member of Skull and Bones. He worked for the Henry Luce Foundation and Fortune magazine, which is CIA funded and connected. He was the Librarian of Congress at the behest of FDR. So this was like World War II era and a little before that this guy was around. So he was Librarian of Congress. He helped develop the research and analysis branch of the OSS, which was the precursor to the CIA. He was the Assistant of War Information for the United States in World War II. He was the Assistant Secretary of State for Public Affairs, which was, again, a giant like propaganda government organization at that time. He represented the United States at the creation of UNESCO. If you guys don't know anything about UNESCO, they are like probably the worst arm of the UN as far as like culture creation, eugenics and
we talk about UNESCO because they sponsor It's a Small World at Disney. And if you think of that in
the Small World, like
Small World. And then if you go to the UNESCO website, it's got a picture of a kid getting a stabby in their arm, and it says, what is it say?
Oh yeah, they're big pushers of that. They're big pushers of veganism. They're big pushers of climate change stuff. Anything that leads to Depop, UNESCO is basically behind it. And this guy, Archibald McLeish, the grandfather of this lawyer who's representing everyone who's a victim of this horrible stuff, he helped put together UNESCO and even contributed to its constitution. He was a Pulitzer Prize winner, which the Pulitzer Prize is another, like, it's basically global elites giving other global elites a prize is what that is. He was the professor of rhetoric and oratory at Harvard. He was commissioned to write a poem about the Apollo 11 moon landing, which is what he won. I think that's what he won the Pulitzer for. Fake and gray poetry.
It always surprises me how much these guys think that they're some sort of like artist or poet.
They are. He was a big writer. Bayes Lit Analyzer, love his channel. He knows about Archie. Maybe I can get him to do like a show on that.
Karl Marx, he was a great poet.
Yes, he did. Oh, this guy was also very Marxist sympathetic.
Okay.
There were like the Red Scare people did not like him, but he was just he was incredibly powerful. And as you can tell, he was everywhere during this time. And he was, he wrote the Apollo 11 moon landing poem, which was commissioned by the New York Times. So in short, this guy was a master propagandist and one of the architects of the New World Order. And his grandson is the lawyer who's representing class action lawsuits of victims who are victims of government stuff, basically. So essentially, they have a guy who handles all these lawsuits on their behalf, is what it looks like to me, because he would be in charge of when attorneys file like discovery for the other side, like where they get all the files with all the information. So it'd be up to him what gets put into court, goes on the public record. Mm-hmm. And it seems to me it's basically his job to get damages for these people and make sure justice is done, you guys. Don't worry about those Catholic priests. Don't worry about the abusive mental hospitals. Don't worry about the Big 9 event, because those victims all have justice and everything is fine now. So just don't worry about it. Just go on with your life. It's like, what are the chances? Oh, and the other thing that Archibald MacLeish, his father, so now we're talking about this attorney's great-great-grandfather. This is obviously very generational. He helped co-found the University of Chicago with John D. Rockefeller. Mm-hmm. And his great-great-granddaughter is actress Laura Dern, who also has all kinds of other big connections. So right. It's like a never-ending.
That is quite a rabbit hole.
It is.
Corruption in the legal system, which is so easy to point out.
Yeah.
And this is how Britney is tied up with all of these corrupt conservator people.
Yeah.
Con men. What's her name? Lou
Taylor.
Lou
yeah,
Taylor.
Basically at the very highest levels, they've got people, and it filters all the way down to lawyers, to judges, to doctors, to conservators, to talent agents. They have their little fingers in the pie everywhere that you could possibly look, which is why it's like, how would you ever get out?
Well, this reminds me of the False Memory Syndrome Foundation, which I'm going to ask you about in 1 second. But now that the dating world has become so toxic, people are waking up to personality disorders and serious integrity disorders, narcissistic abuse. This is getting in mainstream. MK Ultra tactics are being used by people in the dating world when they think they're doing game or red pill.
Yes.
You know, I'm going to do a show about this.
You should. And you know what? I don't know if you know this, but my husband has had a series of debates with some of the most popular red pill guys lately, debunking all their garbage and making them look retarded because they're stupid, because they are.
Yeah.
So all of their little stupid stuff, they think they can debate him and defend it, and they just get absolutely wrecked. And I'm just loving every minute of it, you guys. It's so fantastic.
Well, I'm going to do a show where
you should do one.
I read Fritz Springmeier along with The Game by Neil Strauss, which kind of kicked off this whole thing, and show you step by step how they are teaching you how to literally traumatize a person, a woman, to get her will and spirit broken down so low that she will give you sex for nothing.
Yeah.
Right.
And then you just move on to the next one, and it's fun.
So damaging people has become mainstream. And through this, people who are realizing what's happening, they are becoming familiar with terms, psychological terms that we have always been talking about. If you read Springmeier or whatever, I read that in like 2007 or so. So I already knew what a trigger was. I knew what trauma bonding was, gaslighting, PTSD, projection, and so on. But now girls are talking about this, and they know the terms because of the people they were dating. Are using MK Ultra on them. Right.
But it's like the whole society has been mass traumatized. I mean, if people will watch these videos we're doing, and they'll be like, but why? Like, why would there be such an elaborate conspiracy to control a pop star? Like, what's the point of that? Well, the point of it is, why do you think they do these big elaborate tours and shows and put these videos out and put these songs out? Because it implants all these ideas. It changes people's perception of normal. It changes people's perception of, I mean, all you got to do is look right now. My 21-year-old daughter was just home visiting, telling me about all her different friends that now have OnlyFans. They're like 19, 20, 21 years old, and there's going to be forever pictures of their most intimate body parts online, and they're for like, $40 a month or something stupid. And it's totally acceptable. Sometimes their parents support it. it's like it's just changed the entire worldview of people.
Well,
to continue putting people like Britney and Beyonce and Cardi B and all these different people out there, that's like the top obvious layer, right? To normalize this aggressive female sexuality, this idea that women are just begging to get choked and abused because they love it, they secretly want it. And then you have all the layers of programming that Jamie has been doing such a great job of explaining to you, like the symbolism and how they sneak like subliminal stuff into this, you know? And they kind of traumatize the public with this stuff.
Yeah, it's a microcosm, macrocosm thing.
Yeah.
And sad to say, Britney was integral in this sexual milieu.
Yeah.
Of getting girls to be overtly sexual. And I was going to say, I wish we could see something from her that was not that.
Yeah.
I mean, she's proven, yes, you are very sexy. You are a very good dancer. But it's kind of blasé now. And I want to see what's inside Britney, not what's on outside Britney. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And something funny I just read, it was a video I was watching from a musician I really like, who's not like super mainstream popular, but he's mega talented. And he was talking about how they've done, like, according to all the Nielsen SoundScan stuff, old music is officially more popular than new music now. And I think that's part of the reason why. I think people would rather listen to big band or like 50s doo-wop or something like that, because we're all sick to death of back up your ass and let me do stuff to you. Like, how much of that can you really listen to?
Well, yeah, because when I was watching that Femme Fatale thing, I was just like, I've already seen everyone's butt. I don't, you know what I mean? Like, I've seen
all of the butts all of the time.
I don't need to see that anymore. It's not even.
Well, and now it's getting so absurd that you see all these big stars getting so much injected stuff put in their butt that they literally just look absurd. They look ridiculous. They look like they're walking around with a full diaper on. It doesn't look like a nice butt. It looks like an absurd. Well, I talked about this in my my MK Ultra piece I did about the feminization and the sissy hypno PORN stuff.
Yeah.
Women have been made into this absurd caricature. You have drag queens, which is just an absurd, clownish caricature of what it means to be a woman. Every trans person that's really popular, none of them look like you. None of them look like me. They all look like Anna Nicole Smith or a stripper or a hooker or something like that. They are always like this overly super hypersexualized version of a woman. They're never dressed like a mom in sweatpants. None of these people are transitioning to be like a normal woman. They're all transitioning to be a little sex puppet. And so femininity now has just become oversized huge butts, the giant fake eyelash extensions, the ridiculously long hair extensions and wigs, the enormous fake boobs, the huge overinflated lips. It's like they take any feminine characteristic and blow it up to the point that it looks like a ridiculous clown.
It's Jessica Rabbit.
Yeah.
Remember that character?
Yes, I do.
I mean, that's what literally the archetype is.
Yeah.
Now.
Yeah.
But even the big booty stuff, like, do you remember the Super Bowl with J-Lo and Shakira?
Yeah.
That was like the year of the butt, because then Lizzo did a thing and there was like a giant inflatable butt at it was like Grammys or VMAs, one of those. It was just like it was big as a house.
Yeah.
Just
and now you even have protesters twerk now. If we want to protest something, we're going to twerk. What? It's just gotten so absurd, but everything is so hypersexual. And it's always like my stream that I did with Church of the Eternal Logos, we were talking about this because I was like, why butts? Why? Like, what is and he said that in occult circles, that is the universal vagina, basically, which I know that's gross. Sorry to be gross, but it's a universe, and it always is involved in sex magic stuff. Like Crowley and stuff always ends up being about that.
Yeah.
It just always ends up being about butts, man.
It's a black magic sacrament.
Yes.
And Crowley dreamed of birthing creatures out of butts that were slimy and bloody with like bodily fluids, and it's just super gross. Like,
yeah, and like
ceremonial magic, like it down at the bottom of the abyss, is disgusting.
Yeah, Jack Parsons was super into that, right?
Mm-hmm.
All that stuff too. And Jamie and I noticed this picture, guys, from Brittany's Instagram. Can you,
oh, the rocket.
I can't get it to focus. Oh, there you can kind of see it. If you go look, I think it's still there.
Uh-huh.
It's a hand with red nail polish, and that's a rocket blasting off.
Yeah.
And the hand is around the rocket in a very suggestive manner with the clouds below looking like something else. And I sent that to Jamie and I was like, what is going on here? And the first thing she said was, it reminds me of Jack Parsons. And I was like, oh my gosh, yeah. She's so good at that, you guys. You don't know, you can show her a picture and she'll like instantly put things together that I wouldn't.
Yeah. Parsons was in the OTO. So the father of modern rocketry was doing sex magic rituals in Pasadena and in the desert and summoning demons and aliens and opening portals. And Werner von Braun, the Rocketeer, was working with Disney, and he was also a NAZI mind control scientist. Anyway, we're getting
it's all we are going on our little conspiracy tangent, but the stuff is all very connected. It is all like so in the mainstream pop culture now that you almost can't look at anything without seeing it. If you have seen it, you know.
The Fritz Springmeier books, I can't even stress enough how you need to get these and read both of them, because they are the they live glasses of pop culture. Like, once you read these, you will understand what you're looking at and why things aren't just weird or avant-garde or creative. They are following this script. So we're coming up on 2 hours, but real fast, I want you to tell us about the False Memory Syndrome Foundation, because it goes into what you're talking about with the McLeishes and the control opposition and the lawyers and everything.
Yes, and how they can perpetuate this nonsense.
Yeah.
So the False Memory Syndrome Foundation was founded by Peter and Pamela Frade. And they had a daughter who, as an adult, claimed that she had remembered being abused by her dad. They both completely said, you know, that's not true. It didn't happen. And what happened was so it came out through like these proceedings where the daughter had made these accusations that Peter and Pamela grew up as step siblings in the same home and are now married, a married couple. So that's bizarre. Yeah, and so they like stayed a unified front and insisted that this abuse never happened. And they said that because these false accusations were made against them, that they were going to create this False Memory Syndrome Foundation, which was going to help people who were accused of abuse by their children, saying that they had memories of abuse. So some of the people involved in this project, Ralph Underwager, who was, this guy he reminds me of Lou Taylor and her church husband. He's a minister and a psychologist and the director of the Institute for Psychological Therapies, which he founded in 1974. A controversial statement was made by him and his wife. They did an interview with the Journal of PEDO Stuff in the Netherlands, where apparently you can have that magazine. You can't have that here, but you can have it in the Netherlands. And they were being interviewed and they made a statement saying that they didn't think there was necessarily anything wrong with PEDO stuff and that you could have a perfectly healthy and normal man-boy relationship. And the wife was just like, well, I mean, the only concern I have is that these gay men tend to be really into the kid when he's young. And then once he hits like 15 or 16, they tend to dump him and move on to another young man. And I just think that that's like probably the only problem with it. And the guy said that he felt it was all part of God's plan. That God wants that for you. It makes you happy. If it makes the man happy and the boy happy, then who are we to say it's wrong? It's part of God's plan, because he's a minister. And he was like, as a minister, I think this is perfectly fine. He helped found the False Memory Syndrome Foundation with Peter and Pamela, brother, sister, husband, wife. So that's a little suspicious right off the bat, but these guys they basically ended up being a lobbying group, and they would go to Congress or different state legislatures to try to get laws for child protection overturned. They would say that, I mean, CPS is not a great organization. I'm suspicious of them myself, that they would try to say that all CPS cases were just attempts to steal kids, and that there's no such thing as remembering traumatized memories, that it wasn't a thing, right? So they put together this scientific advisory board. Among the people on the scientific advisory board was Aaron T. Beck, who is the founder of cognitive behavioral therapy, which interestingly is where the creeper lady we were just talking about, who came up with the dialectical behavior therapy, that came out of this guy's work. Mm-hmm. So he was the father of cognitive behavioral therapy. He went to Yale and Brown University and got a PhD from Yale Medical School in 1946. He, what else? Oh, he had military service. He was the chief of neuropsychiatry at Valley Forge Army Hospital from 52 to 54, which again, MK Ultra Hospital.
Years.
Huh?
Yeah. MK total Ultra years.
MK Ultra years. Valley Forge Army Hospital was an MK Ultra hospital. They really started it with Army guys. Even Jolyon West started on an Army base experimenting on Army guys, because the military owns you. Mm-hmm. So these lower rung Army guys, they felt like they could do whatever they wanted to them. So yeah, he had a wife and kids who also were in powerful government positions. Ernest Hilgard was a Yale graduate from 1930. He was into hypnosis and wrote psych textbooks about divided consciousness and silent observer theory and dual personalities.
There you go.
Paul R. McHugh was part of a panel set up by the Roman Catholic Church to look into the priest abuse scandals. He was on the Harvard Medical School board and raised near Boston. He did his residency in neurology at Massachusetts General Hospital, in an area of the hospital that was run by McLean. He went to Walter Reed Army Hospital and was the professor of psychology at Cornell, Cornell is like, Harvard and Cornell were the two biggest MK Ultra schools, where most of everything came out of those two. He founded the Born Behavioral Research Lab, which you also cannot find anything about now. Nothing. I took like days looking for anything about Born Research Lab, and it was closed down and has disappeared. So I think that's another like front lab. They did a lot of these. They would set up a research lab that was basically a front, and then when they were done, they would erase it from history. And let's see. Oh, he was on George W. Bush's Council on Bioethics and played a role in the defense of notorious Catholic priest Joseph Maskell, who was one of the worst offenders. Mm-hmm. So these are the people who are on the False Memory Syndrome Foundation board, who are going to tell you all about how kids don't remember trauma and abuse.
So this is the ultimate gaslighting that we're talking about.
Yes, this is where you take the actual people who are doing the stuff, you form a foundation that's going to protect you from the stuff they're doing to you.
Yeah. And they're so good at projection too. Like I noticed a lot of this on Brittany's team conservatorship. They're always, yeah. They're master projectors, and they will always accuse you of doing what they're doing.
Yes, exactly. And so there's just a couple more people on this scientific advisory board, you guys. It's the scientific advisory board of scientists. Trust the science. Okay. This is an early version of Trust the Science. We had Dr. Ulrich Neisser, who was a German who was brought over under Operation Paperclip and got a doctorate in experimental psychology from Harvard in 1956. He went into the subfield of psychophysics and instructed at Harvard, spent the rest of his year at Cornell, published a case study of the Watergate testimony and challenged the memory of one of those witnesses, and also contributed to the book, The Bell Curve, which is all about how Black people aren't smart.
Oh man.
Yeah, a really nice guy there. Totally eugenicist, NAZI doctor who came over here and started doing crazy, weird experimental psychology exactly during the peak years of MK Ultra under Operation Paperclip. And then my final one on this scientific advisory board is Dr. Elizabeth Loftus. She was mentioned by two women who were prostitutes who claimed to be victims of MK Ultra, who gave a 1995 testimony in a hearing by the Clintons Committee on Human Radiation Experiments. So this is another thing they do. The government will find out that another part of the government's doing something awful that they shouldn't be doing, and they'll immediately put together a committee to get to the bottom of it and reassure the public that they've investigated and they've held, whoever responsible. So the Clintons,
you remember the Big Nine Commission?
Oh yeah,
right. And we investigated ourselves and we found we didn't do anything wrong.
Yeah, and they do the same thing with the IRS, and they do the same thing with the Kennedy assassination. They do it all the time. It's their favorite thing to do. They did it with MK Ultra. MK Ultra had the Rockefeller Committee investigated MK Ultra. Okay, guys. Mm-hmm. So yes, the Clintons put together a committee on human radiation experiments because apparently there was some use of radiation involved in MK Ultra too, and some other bioweapons type of things they were doing. So these two women testified that they were victims in MK Ultra experiments, and that this doctor, Elizabeth Loftus, was involved in this stuff. And she had connections to Louis Jolyon West, Dr. Martin Orne, who was called by Harvey Weinstein's defense.
I remember that guy, Martin T. Orne.
Yes. So, and they helped assemble a board that gave testimony. Yeah, these two women, Claudia Mullen and Christine DeNicola. So it's the exact people who are doing the stuff are going to form some kind of board or committee or foundation to investigate the stuff and assure you that they've taken care of it. And then they'll have their lawyer sue and get damages so that there's justice done and you don't have to worry about it anymore. It's not a problem.
This is what I really like, that everybody is catching on to narcissism, but they need to extend it. I say this all the time, to your government. It's not just your ex-boyfriend. This is your president, it's your congressman, it's your senators. It's like all of these old coots who are running this thing are total narcissist psychopaths.
Yeah.
Right?
Who do you think gets to the highest positions on these things? How do you think a hospital like Bridgewater gets away with this for decades, even though they get sued again and again, and people keep dying in their custody, and they, every 10 years they go, oh, we found abuses and we fixed them, we promise. Like, do you think that the people who run those places care if it continues?
Can you guess what the third leading cause of death in the US is? It's not COVID.
Is it medical malpractice?
Yeah. So
yeah, and
bronze medal for killing people, it's hospitals.
Yeah.
So,
and that should not surprise anybody with the certain medical interventions they've been pushing the last 2 years, with the food pyramid, there's a huge battle right now going on in psychiatry over the fact that some actual scientists did a bunch of studies and found that the whole chemical imbalance theory of depression and mental illness is baloney. It's total bullcrap. There's no evidence for it. There hasn't been for a long time. I've been saying this for years, but they finally actually have like scientific studies that say, wait, this is all baloney. We're handing out SSRIs, we're giving out all these different drugs, and we don't have any mechanism. We don't have any evidence that shows that this is what causes it or that these drugs are what cure it.
Yeah.
But guys, if you look into all this research that I'm going to put out there for you on my Substack, these drugs that everyone is on now came out of MK Ultra experiments. All the SSRIs, the ADHD stuff, the anti-anxiety meds, all this stuff was crap they were fooling around with to see if they could mind control people. And now it's the cure to your depression, and give it to your kids.
Yeah, they're
putting kids on it.
Oops, serotonin doesn't have anything to do with this when all of it is about your serotonin reuptake or whatever. Like, leave your serotonin floating where it is. But I think a lot of the people who have depression are being narcissistically abused.
Yes.
And if you get
Yes,
away
of
from
course.
toxic people, you feel better
Yes.
and you don't
And
need meds.
another big piece to that puzzle is around the same time that they started doing all these things, they changed all the divorce laws and made no fault divorce a thing. The divorce rate went sky high. All these kids are being raised in single mom homes with mom's boyfriend. If you look into the statistics on that, children are like 40 times more likely to be abused by mom's boyfriend than their dad.
I heard
it removes the protector from the home.
Yeah.
So now the mom is vulnerable and the kids are vulnerable. And so the mom is depressed, the kids are messed up, the kids don't do well in school, everyone's dysfunctional, so we put them all on drugs.
Mm-hmm. I mean, nothing against step parents, but that dynamic is not healthy. Like, it's not ideal. And especially the culture we have now, like you said, I heard it was worse than that. Like, I heard it's like 100 times more likely to be abused.
It might be that the chance of death is 40 times more, but that the chance of abuse is like 200 times more. I tweeted about it and made everybody really mad. So I should go back and check my own tweets. But it's insane, the numbers.
I know.
It's crazy, the numbers.
We're rambling now and we're not even getting to this testimony. We're going to have to do a part 3. But what was I going to say about step parents? Oh, that's why like all the hippies and stuff, they would push like communal living.
Yes.
Tiny houses. And like even in Soviet Russia, they would have like communal living, or like multiple families live in one apartment and they have their... That is so dangerous because
it's very conducive to abuse.
Exactly. I'm like, do you know how much cheating and molesting is going to go on when you live in a commune?
Tons. That's basically all that happens, which is why, like, I know somebody in the comments last time was like, you keep teasing us with this book that's coming out. I know, guys, I take like a year to research before I put out a book, because when you make claims like this, you have to be rock solid. You have to have airtight evidence. You can't go around saying that crazy stuff's going on and not have any proof. So if I'm going to put out a book, it's going to have like the best possible, most airtight research I can get on it. But the people who were behind the commune ideas in Russia and Soviet Russia were people who were also running secret cults, secret sex clubs, where they would have their own children like, it's really crazy stuff. The people who come up with these ideas, and of course it's always because they want to help you. They want to help the poor. They want to help women who are struggling. They want to help children who are struggling. So we're going to put them in like these horrific situations that are super conducive to abuse.
Mm-hmm. And they're just like, share, man, share, brother, share everything. Share your
wife, share your kid. Yeah. But so if you're looking at the Britney thing and you haven't gone down these rabbit holes and you're like, this seems crazy. It seems like, why would they do all this to one pop star? And why would there be this elaborate thing going on? Like, is it same way that most people look at these types of situations? They just project their own goodness onto it and can't understand that other people would do this.
Exactly.
But to these people who do these things, you're weak.
Mm-hmm.
And it's stupid to be good. If you were smart, they invert everything, right? They turn it inside out and upside down, and they think that what they're doing is the good thing. They think that it's ultimately like neutral or good. They don't think it's bad. And this is how the system keeps people like Britney under control. Once you hear everything that we just said, it makes a lot more sense how it wouldn't even be hard for them.
Mm-hmm.
It's not even hard.
They think they have transcended good and evil.
Yeah.
That's what the checkerboard floor is about. The magician is above black and white, right and wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And they can be a good person when it suits them.
Yeah.
Or a bad person when it suits them. So they can do the right thing if it benefits them, or they can screw somebody over. It makes no never mind if they're getting ahead.
Yeah. And it's hard for normal people to imagine that you could purposely traumatize a child to the point that you fracture their mind into like compartments and pieces.
Mm-hmm.
But these people it does not elicit the emotional response from them that it would from you.
Because their frontal lobe is damaged. Like if you look into the neuroscience of narcissistic personality disorder and things like that, it's, their cortex, empathy, conscience, like higher emotions, is Arrested Development or just like dead.
Yeah, I have a close family member who is one of these people that I grew up with, and that person once said to me, like, I would want to be a good mom and a good person and stuff like you, but I just don't have those feelings. I just don't. Like, I can't make myself have them. Mm-hmm. I can only feel when I'm upset, and me saying something that upsets you, like, I don't get it. I can't mm-hmm. connect that. So it's, and like I've been told by therapists and doctors and stuff that there's nothing you can do about that. There's no pill. There's no like real therapy or anything.
I've heard that, and I almost agree with it, except for it takes away free will. And I think anybody can.
These people know that evil exists.
Yeah.
Clearly. They clearly believe, maybe not all of them, but a good portion of them believe in a satanic Luciferian type of power. They believe in evil. And if you know evil is real, and if you know that magic works, then you know that God is real, and you know that goodness is real.
Mm-hmm.
So that really kind of takes away the excuse. I mean, even if you are somebody that has like a brain issue where you're not like naturally inclined to empathy or something like that, if you know that there's such a thing as evil, then you know that there's such a thing as good.
Like I've seen narcissists on TikTok and stuff, and they're like, I know I have this disorder, but I choose to, you know, do the right thing instead of using my abilities for evil. And speaking of that, and we're going to close right now, and we're going to put a pin in it and do it again. If you'll have to come back. Do you want to come back?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. I felt a little bad last week because we were ripping on Madonna.
Oh, why'd you feel bad about that?
I was like, she's probably a victim of this too. You know, she's the Madonna, like the Madonna whore dichotomy.
Yeah.
And she was probably raised in an abusive environment. She's Catholic. She probably has gone through all of this rigmarole, and it's not right to just like have all this sympathy for Britney and save Britney. And we also have to be a little easy on Madonna, because even though she seems, you know, like a Disney villain, right? She's like Cruella or something, but we still have hope that, you know, she can repent too.
Yeah.
And we pray for her, and we don't want to condemn anybody before it's all over. Right?
Yeah, that's true.
So
it would be interesting to try to do a deep dive on Madonna. I don't know how much you could, like, I've looked into her a little, but I haven't done like a super deep dive. I wonder what that would turn out.
Yeah, because
she was involved with some really crazy people early on, like Sean Penn and some of those people.
Yeah, so. You remember that classic conspiracy picture where she had like the eye in the pyramid on her jacket?
Yeah.
And she came out with a bang and the sexiness, and she had that book, and she was another Marilyn Monroe personification.
Tons of pictures of her with the hair and the makeup and the dresses, and she did the video. Tons and tons of Marilyn Monroe mirroring and equivalency and stuff like that with her. Mm-hmm. So maybe. So
thank you guys for coming to Britney Part 2, and we will wrap it up next time. We're going to talk about her actual conservatorship testimony that was recent, like 2019. We're going to talk about some more videos. We're going to talk about some documentaries. The Free Britney Project Rose we didn't get to. That was super weird. And her Las Vegas, all of this stuff. We're going to wrap it up next time. So thank you all for coming, and good night.